All right, and we are live again. We're back after several weeks of very much earned vacations, I must say. I was traveling in Europe with my family. We're finally back on the Campfire show, and I have the immense pleasure to have John Carlos Sanabria. Do I pronounce it right?
Yeah, very well.
Oh, yeah, John Carlos Sanabria with me today. John, thank you for taking the time and for being the very first graduate to join after the break.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
All right. So, for those of you who are new to the show, you should know that we are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. All three streams are broadcasting simultaneously. And you can ask your questions. So, the deal is we're going to hear John's story. I'm going to ask questions to really understand how you went from what you did before to your current position in tech. But then you can ask your questions online. So you just type in the chat, and we'll actually answer them live. You can also, if you want, and let me pull that. You can also join us via this link. There we go. So url.newcamp.co/dialin. If you click that link, what's going to happen is you're going to join John and I right here, right where we are. So you'll have your microphone on, you'll have your video on, and you'll be able to just have a chat with us live, ask any questions, and that'll be great. That'll be fun. So don't hesitate to do that as well. But as I said, the chat, and Brandon is with us. The chat is available to you if you want to ask any questions. All right, so John, thank you so much for joining again. You've had a really, really interesting journey into tech. Could you just introduce yourself briefly? Where are you joining from? Where are you joining this live show from? When did you join NewCamp? When did you graduate? When did you get your first job? And then we will really go back in time, and I will ask you about the first jobs that you had, and pretty much talk about your whole journey into tech.
Sure. So I'm located in Southern California now, in a small town called Ridgecrest, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, can you run through each of those one at a time? I'm a little bit older. I'm 38.
Yeah, that's not old, trust me.
Well, I think had I done this when I was, fresh out of high school or something, it probably would have been a little bit better.
And when did you join NewCamp? When did you graduate? And when did you get your first job in tech? And then we'll go back in time after that.
I did the back-end course, and I believe it started in September, ended in January, and the coursework finished in December, I believe.
That's
Graduation wasn't until January because of the holidays.
Yeah.
So that got pushed back, and then I got my job, I guess, March, I think it was.
Oh, March 2022. So 3 months after graduation.
Yes.
You're definitely going to have to tell us how you achieved that. 3 months is not a lot.
No.
And we have Alejandro saying hi.
Hello.
We have Michael coming back, joining us from Phoenix. 40, Alejandro is still not old in my book. The link in the chat. Yes, I can do that. You mean, I'm probably guessing you're meaning the link
to join the
dial-in link.
There you go.
So it's url.newcamp.co/dial-in. You'll find it as well in Slack. And we have Mikhail Braun as well with us. Krista. All right. There's a lot of people joining. That's awesome. So, John, let's take it from the beginning. While you were just talking about high school, what did you study? I mean, what was your path fresh out of high school?
So when I was in high school, I took business and technology as my elective sort of route. And so I did some Cisco networking when I was, I think it was my senior year. Yeah, my senior year. I took a course where I was able to learn Cisco networking, computer hardware, basic server stuff. And that sort of primed me to be in technology. I had already done a lot of things in technology before that. Me and a few of my friends started a computer repair company when we were in high school.
Oh, wow.
And so we were building custom computers, we were networking houses, just basic computer stuff. At the time, because like I said, I'm a bit older, most people did not know how to do anything regarding their computers.
Yeah.
So it was a niche where people were still willing to pay some kid a couple of bucks to come in and swap out their hard drive or fix the monitor or add RAM to their computer, something very easy. Most people had desktops, big clunky things in their
Yeah.
house. And so I used to do that before. And so it was cool business when I was in high school. And like I said, I started to sort of narrow it down a bit and went into the Cisco networking course. I didn't end up getting my certification, and I never ended up really using it after that. But I'd always been someone who was really pretty good with computers. It was just sort of a hobby, and we'd grown up with them. And so I'd always been knowing how to kind of
Yeah.
do little
You
things with computers, but not in programming or any of the stuff that you guys cover. So it was kind of
yeah.
just a different side for me.
So, I actually did exactly what you did. When I was at the university, we had a group, me and a bunch of friends created an association, and we were doing, computer repairs as well. We were going in, I think it was university labs, and we were doing like defragging of their hard drives to make sure
Yep.
that it was performing still correctly.
Mhm.
I mean, the routine maintenance that we would have
No
to
one
do.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember I had, a floppy disk with all the programs. You will run the antivirus for them. You will actually defrag their hard drives for them.
Yep.
Back in the days, that's what you had. You had to do that to make sure that your computer will run.
Oh yeah.
So this is pretty cool, and we are seeing a lot of more people here joining as well. Zuhair, great to have you here. Starting very soon. That's awesome. Victoria. Krista, yes, we're back. I'm glad to see you as well. Yeah, not on this daughter. Exactly. That's what it was at the time.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because, I mean, you went into Cisco, and your current career right now as a cloud engineer is very much in the DevOps space, in the operations space. So that's kind of really a common trajectory here. So what did you end up doing though when you graduated? Did you get into the computer space or something else? Tell us.
No, completely not at all. So what had happened was I was sort of the guy who was just very into music. I'm sure a lot of us have friends who are very into music. And so when I was growing up, I was always the person everyone would say, "Hey, would you bring all the music for the parties? Will you bring some music? You always have a good music selection."
Were
And
you
so
a DJ or of sorts?
yeah, I started off just being the person who just brought music to whatever
Yeah.
parties we were having in high school. And one time I did a house party, and I was playing the music, and the friend of mine had their parents who were home, and the parents heard the music, and they were getting married. And about 3 months later, and they said, "Would you play music at my wedding?" And I said, "Sure, I guess so." I never thought of it like a career path, and from there, it just progressed into me learning that it was an actual skill that you could use to make money as a DJ. And so I started
Oh, that's cool.
DJing house parties and weddings and bars and clubs, and it just progressed from there. And so I really just became a DJ for quite a while after that. I did that for many, many years. I still continue to in my spare time
Oh,
to
really?
this.
Do you? So that's a passion of yours.
Yeah, I would say it's sort of it's a way to get paid to party and have fun. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of a nice little nexus of all these interesting skills and abilities. And yeah, it's nice.
Being paid to crush someone else's party in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I see that, I see that on your LinkedIn profile. And we'll talk about the fact that you have two LinkedIn profiles in a little bit. But you were a DJ for, up until now. You're still doing it, you say.
Yeah, 22
But
years.
that's right. But then it seems like you moved into sales, right? I mean, when I look at your profile online, I see a lot of sales type of roles. Can you tell us a little bit how you went from, DJing to being sales? And then very soon after, I want to get into, okay, how did you then flip the switch and
Sure.
decide to do
So
something else?
what happened was when you DJ, you make a lot of money and you work only really on the weekends. It's really a Friday, Saturday night kind of thing. And the rest of the week, you have nothing to do. And so I would do some little sales here, some little sales there. Like I told you, I had gone to school. And when I was in school, all my electives were business and technology focused. And so I started working at a cell phone repair place. I did a couple of other jobs that were just sort of sales related. And it was really just because I had spare time and nothing better to do. And I really was interested in business in general. Commerce has always been fascinating to me. And so I sort of tried a bunch of little roles and tried things and did this and that. And then it really sort of switched in 2007. My friend had a mom who decided, she retired from her old job and she decided to retire and start her own business. And so she started a catering company, and he just asked, hey, would you be free? Would you be willing to help out with this event? It was just a single event to start with. And I went and I did one event, and his mom came and talked to me afterward and said, hey, you really seem to know your way around parties and events. I said, well, yeah, I mean, I go to them every weekend all the time. It's sort of like my nightlife, weekend life. And she said, would you be interested in, sort of like leading a team? You know where things need to be when. And it's really valuable for me as like a leader of the event. And I said, sure, I guess, why not? And then she saw me as a lead. You sort of, you're the liaison between the client and the company. And she saw me talking to people, and she said, you really know your stuff. Would you be interested in coming into the office and doing sort of like the sales administration side? And I said, sure, I guess. And so again, it was like, I have nothing better to do on my weekdays. So I went in and I started working in the office. And yeah, I mean, you've been to, I don't know, probably went to 500 weddings before that. And so, yeah, I just knew China and linens, and, I'm just used to it. You see them setting up and tearing down every night. You just sort of get a flow for it. And so I ended up coming in and being I guess we called it the office manager, but you sort of just, you do everything. It was a very small company. And so you wear a lot of hats. And because I also had this background in technology, I became like their IT help desk guy. If something broke, if, the drivers weren't working, if we bought some new equipment, if we expanded our office and we had to get new computers and get all the software on them. And then later on, I was setting up basically anything you can think of. I mean, we had our servers, we had file systems, we had all kinds of stuff going on. And so, yeah, I just became the tech guy. I did everything tech for the company. And
that's
so,
pretty cool. So I'm guessing you probably had no problem in finding your next DJ gig, right? You were kind of you were able to sell a package to the
yes.
to the guests, right?
If people would say, we were looking for DJ services, can you throw that in? And it was like, yeah, I can make that work too. So it was good. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we have Kyle as well. Hey, Kyle, thanks for the plug here. Good to see you back. And I think Alejandro wants to join us. If you follow that link, if you type it in, Alejandro, you'll be able to join us live. All right. So, yeah. So that's Dinon and Doyle Entertainment Group, right? I imagine. So you seem to have a really good life. I mean, very much, engaging people who are, I presume, very happy about what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So, and then you were doing, it seems, what you really enjoyed doing, DJing the weekend. So what made you want to change? What pushed you to think about, I mean, leaning more towards the computer stuff that you set on the side, I guess?
Yeah. So what happened was the pandemic hit.
Oh,
and when the pandemic comes, there's no parties, there's no catering, there's no DJing, there's no bars, everything's shut down, and it was shut down for years. And so I thought, people are always going to have parties, people are always going to have gatherings, I can always work. This will never end. And then it ended. And so it was like, all right, we got to pivot. you don't really have a choice. My wife came to me and said, we're pregnant.
Yeah.
So this is a really bad time for you not to have a job and for all this to fall through. And it was like, well, I had always been very good with computers. And my wife had a job where she was doing some coding and
Oh,
dealing with programs and software. And so she said, I think you would really enjoy this. I think you would be really good at it. And she said, why don't you, look into it? And so I got a book called Heads Up Python,
mhm.
and I started reading it and I started doing some of it. And I said, this is kind of cool. I can see where this works. And a lot of the software I had used, my DJ software, a lot of the other programs we had used were based in Python. And I said, this is something that
Oh,
touches
really? I didn't know that.
all different levels
Oh,
of stuff. And I said, I think this would be a really good thing to go into. And I was, like I said, playing with it and going through it. And then when this was right before she told me that she was pregnant, and then she told me she was pregnant. And I said, okay, I need to stop doing this on my own
yeah.
terms and sort of just flowing with it and go get some actual direction. And so I had already been researching coding boot camps as an option.
Hmm.
And so I want to say within the next 2 days or something, I signed up for New Camp.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah.
that was pretty fast. And you know what? I don't think a lot of people are very that decisive in making their choice, right? I think most people will tinker a lot on their own, and it's actually a good thing because as long as you can do it for free and as long as you can
Yeah.
accumulate knowledge for free, it's good. But I can see the the
Well, yeah.
urgency
Well,
for
not
you
only that,
of
but
making it
your
real.
boot camp for backend was, I think, 3 or 4 months.
That's
And I'm like,
right.
I'm
I
going to
mean,
have
I
a
think
baby
you
in 9
probably,
months. So if I
you know
can
what,
get
you registered for the
400,
first, yeah, you
yeah,
registered for the first cohort that was open to everyone.
yep.
The very first one actually started in August, but it was we capped it. Like we
Mhm.
had only a few people, and we invited previous graduates from full stack to also join that one. Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, they had to be starting soon.
Yeah.
It had to be short enough that I could go through the training and then
Mhm.
hopefully have a job before the baby arrived. And so that's
Wow.
why I was like, this is the one. It's short. It was economical. It was, fair price. It was, I can start right now and I will be done and have the skills and knowledge before the baby comes.
And that's exactly what you did.
That's exactly what I did.
That's, I mean, that's really, really impressive to see, how much you had a plan, you committed to it, and you actually executed beautifully on it. We have Taz saying, yeah, tinkering is essential. It's true. I mean, you want to tinker as long as you can.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think Alex was able to join us. Hey, Alex, we're going to continue to have a conversation and then I'll bring you on. Because I want to ask you, like, not only did you really crystallize a plan very quickly, but you picked a bootcamp in 2 days. And for me, again, it's a pretty short amount of time. Most people will, you know, give their emails to multiple bootcamps and talk to folks. Did you ever consider another coding bootcamp, or what was your criteria? And I guess you did share a little bit of that, right? Short enough and starting soon, but what else did you consider at the time, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So I actually Googled top rated coding boot camps. About 5 different articles came up. I looked at several. I want to say I emailed 5 different companies that I decided were good. And I ended up doing a search on Reddit about each of them right after I had emailed them. And a bunch of people were saying good things about New Camp. And I said, New Camp is a shorter course and they do what I wanted. So you guys were one of the few people who did cloud. You
Yes.
required the back end as well. And
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was relevant or not, but you guys had a portion where it was cloud DevOps. And
Yeah.
that's really where I wanted to go. And so I decided, I could do full stack or front end and all this other stuff from all these other classes, but you guys were the only one who really did back end cloud. And so I was like, that's what I want to do. That's where I think the future is going to be. And so that's why I picked you guys, because it was like short, it was very economical, like I said, and it taught what I wanted to learn. I didn't want to have to learn front end and all this other stuff that I wasn't planning on using. And
Yeah.
so I really wanted to zero in and focus on what I wanted and what I saw the future being.
And you were pretty right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, not a lot of coding bootcamps are touching on cloud and DevOps, and
Yeah.
there is a very interesting niche in that space, which is
Well, not
not a
only
niche; it's a
that,
huge niche, right?
yes, it's a huge niche. Like I said, AWS, Azure, and Google. I mean,
Yeah,
they're big
huge.
names, and
Yeah,
AWS is everywhere. Everyone
yeah.
uses it, and there aren't enough people who specialize in it, so that the jobs are always going. And so for me, it was like I can get a job right away.
So pause for a minute
Mhm.
because we're going to have an announcement to make shortly, and I can't tell what it's going to be, but we're going to
Okay,
make some teaser. It should happen by the end of this month, but we have something in that space that's going to be pretty exciting.
cool,
I can't tell what it is, but it's pretty much what we just talked about right here.
great.
Hey, Alex, if you're ready, I'll bring you over. How you doing, Alex? Mic check.
Sounds
Can you hear
good.
us?
Yep, I can hear you guys. Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you as well. All right. Thanks for
Awesome.
joining. Alex, please introduce yourself real quick. Are you a student of New Camp or are you looking into it? And then what question will you have for John?
Sure. No, I don't have any questions, sadly. But I just wanted to join and say hi to everyone. I was a student in the full stack boot camp at New Camp. We graduated in March of this year, and I recently started working for the state of Alaska
Oh,
as
that's
a
awesome.
analyst
Congrats.
programmer the beginning of last month. And
Congrats.
Cool.
so I just want to be here to show support for those that may have came in or considering new camp and wondering whether or not it's going to be a good option or not. Everything that I learned in boot and new camp, along with several other boot camps, has prepared me for the position I'm in now, and it's been great. So
Oh, well, thank you. Did you actually join in the past? I think I remember talking to you online. No?
I did, yes. So we had Don, the developer, had
Yes,
me on, and in one point, and then
that's right.
yes,
That's right. All
we
right.
had
Well,
a
I really appreciate that you showed up, Alex. I'm going to remove you from the stream, but please stay on and let us know if you have any questions
Yeah,
for
answer
John or
questions
myself.
in the chat. I know people will want to know and hear from you.
Yeah, that's
sure.
right. All right. So tell us. So you registered. When did you register to start in September? Was it in August then? I
In
guess.
August, yeah. I think, like you said, there was that other course, and I want to say I tried to actually add to the August one, and like you said, that first cohort where you couldn't add, and I was like, it's not working, and I was like, well, there's another one in September. I'll just take that one.
Yeah, and we have Don actually with us. So Alex, you have your buddy here that
There you
says
go.
hi as well. Good to see you, Don. So okay, so you started in September. Boy, part of me makes me think like you actually had the very first version of the bootcamp content, and I know not everything was perfect back then,
No,
um, and we
it was
made
great.
great progress. But
Yeah.
so how was it? I mean, what was it for you to be in the bootcamp? It's a part-time boot camp and you were probably full-time. You would have been able to be full-time. Like how did you organize your time around the boot camp and what did you do to be successful in graduating?
Well, the good thing, like I said, is that I had no job. I had no obligations because the pandemic had taken away both of my sources of income. And so I had all day free. And so I could really just sink my teeth into all the information. So
Mhm.
usually every day I would log in, I would do some stuff. I don't know. Sometimes when I was learning certain portions of the course, it would be like an overload. So for me personally, I like to do maybe 1 or 2 hours in the morning. As soon as I wake up, I feel like I'm sharpest. Then I'd take a
Mhm.
break. I would eat, come back and do maybe another hour if necessary. And then if I didn't finish something up, then it would be that evening. And that way I'd sort of break it up. I could sit on marinate on things. Um, I'm sure other people know that when you learn a concept, sometimes it'll trigger something else for you, and you sort of want to continue down that path. I didn't want to stifle my curiosity, so if
Yeah,
something was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool," let me kind of deep dive on that. I could still do that and then come back to it later,
yeah, that's
which I
great.
really appreciate when you're working on your own. Like I said, if something sounds interesting or cool, or maybe you don't get it, you can even go back and do that again, and you don't have to worry about, am I holding up the class? Is there going to be some sort of an issue with me getting my things done on time? And so it was really the best time for me to learn a new skill because I didn't have any other responsibilities or
Yeah.
obligations.
That makes sense. For the people who are listening who may not be familiar with the backend curriculum, let me actually give an overview real quick. It's a sequence of 3 modules, and each one is very much focused on one specific area. So the very first one is, we call it Python fundamentals. So it's all about learning to program in Python, functions, variables, loops. We touch on data structures and algorithm there. The second module is we go straight into SQL, relationship databases, modelization of SQL tables and relationships, optimization. We also touch on Django and Flask in the way that you can actually visualize that and start to build a kind of simple UI around it. And then the third module, and I think we do some DevOps in the second as well, but in terms of deployment, we start to talk about containers and and then the third module is very much the cloud. And so that's where we throw in Amazon, AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and we do deployment. We use GitHub Actions to do
CI/CD pipelines,
CI/CD pipeline and all that. So that's kind of an overview. The question I have for you is, what did you like the most? And what did you dislike the most? And what was the most challenging? So disliked, most challenging.
Good question. So I would say the thing that I liked different things in each module. So I will tell you that Python I liked the most, that when we were learning it, we were constantly doing real world projects.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for example, the one I really liked is that we built the software for an ATM. So it's one of the things we covered, and it was like, this is like, I've been in many, many ATMs. I've seen something that looks exactly like this, that does exactly this thing. And I said, you know what, even if I get nothing else, if I leave after, I don't know, it's like week 4. If I leave after week 4, I can just reprogram ATMs someday, like perfectly good. I can do this. So that was really cool for that section. For the SQL section, I really liked that I was able to see the visualizations. At the very end, we do a bunch of visualizations with the data, and you get to look at it and do a bunch of different stuff with it. And that was really cool. And then for the cloud, I really liked that I got experience with all 3 providers. I know AWS, Amazon is definitely the largest, but having the experience with all 3 and doing deployments in all of them has been very helpful in my professional life afterwards. So that was really good. As far as things I disliked, there were things that were missing from, like I said, it was the first iteration, and I was constantly giving feedback and saying, hey, if you guys would touch on this, it'd be really helpful. And I think that was across all 3. It was like there was these holes, but like I said, it was a newer system. It was something that had just come in, and it was like, okay, if we can add this in, that would be really good. And so, I mean,
I hope we ended up doing that. I hope we ended up adding those things.
Hopefully, like I said, I haven't gone. Do you guys upgrade the coursework that we have access to?
Yeah.
After you graduate? Okay. So
constantly. If you go back to the learning environment, you're going to see your green squares. If you had 100% before, you're going to see that go down to 90%, 80%, because a ton of stuff will be updated and changed. Hey, we have actually a question, and I see that Mikhail is trying to join, but Mikhail, I would love to see your video, and you had it on at some point, but for me to bring you in, I need to see your video as well. There is that question. It's a tough one, but I think we can distill down to its core, which is, what if you want to not work at a major corporation? In your experience, John, like, did you encounter a lot of small companies that were looking for, people that had your skills?
I would say a bit of both. You're going to see the big companies. Actually, most of the big companies don't put out job requests. They just, they're always hiring, like the Meta, the big banks. They're always hiring. You can always go work for them. AWS, I mean, they don't really say much. But the smaller companies are definitely putting stuff in. I know most of the interviews that I ended up getting information from were more smaller, 10, 20 person teams. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with coding And a lot of it is just people who are trying to optimize their systems that they've already had going. So there was a couple of nonprofits that I spoke with. There was a company that was basically like a Meals on Wheels for people. You'll find all kinds of like I forget the name of the gentleman who was in here earlier. He works for the state.
That's right.
There's all kinds of things that you
Alex.
can do with this. You don't have to necessarily work for some big corporation that you don't align with.
Yeah, and it's great to have. You want to know where you're standing, and you'll find companies that have values that align to yours,
Right.
pretty much. And I'll say it's not always the big corporations that are the bad guys. You could actually have small companies that are mismanaged or with the wrong leader at the top. So be careful in making a decision. It's not because you're big that you're good, that you're bad, and it's not because you're small that you're good.
Right. I always tell people when you're interviewing, make sure you're also interviewing them. You want to make sure you want to work for them, and that the team that you're going on and the people that you're going to be under are worth being associated with.
That's right. And we have a question here from Kyle, actually, who I think was probably a full stack graduate. That one is for you, John. Do you think you need any form of front-end knowledge to do the back-end course?
Not at all. There are some points where it will be helpful, but not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say you need any form of front-end knowledge at all. It's sort of helpful if you have a general idea of how the web works, knowing that there is a front end, an experience layer that people are using to send back data or things like that. Also, for your final project, you're going to build an application, you're going to deploy it, you're going to set up a SQL database, and you're going to put that up in the cloud. And so if you don't build a front end to that application, it can be a bit tough. But I mean, you can just make a very simple front end. You don't need any sort of front end knowledge. It's not a problem.
Yeah, no, I would agree to that.
Yeah, Flask and Django, we both learned that they sort of can give you something very basic and simple.
Yeah. There's a conversation here on the chat regarding the Saturday workshops. And Alex is saying, really, I wouldn't recommend missing a Saturday. But I will agree, and actually that's what we tell students. What was your experience about the Saturday workshops?
Saturdays were tough for me.
Oh, yeah?
Well, when I was completing this, the world sort of started coming back from the pandemic. And so DJ gigs started coming up, and it was the only money I could get. So I would go, and the Saturday morning classes would be, I want to say from like 10 to 2 or something, I think it was. And so it would be right on that edge. So sometimes I would be listening to the Saturday lecture and people's questions while I'm like driving, my laptop's open on the side, and I'm like, I had it in my headset or something. So sometimes it would be tough, or I'd have to go into work early, and I'd sit at the warehouse, the DJ warehouse, and I would be on my laptop, like listening to
I can totally see you with a earpiece, having the music banging, and then on the other one, listening to the
coursework,
the DevOps videos.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
totally.
it would be tough, but I would say I would agree. Saturday, because you're working through it as a group, and you're going to hear all these questions, and there's a lot of answers that the instructors will give that they might clue you in on something that isn't actually directly covered in the coursework, but it's still very relevant and applicable.
Yeah. Hey, I want to plug in. I know Don did a recent video, and he interviewed someone who's a DevOps engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to plug that into the chat for those who are interested in learning more about the position that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be this one. Oh, and yeah, don't mind the timestamp here. It's where, but yeah, go back to the beginning of the video. That's what you'll find. Hey, we have Michael wanting to join as well. Michael, can you hear us? I'm going to bring you into the, yeah. All right, let's go. Hey, Michael.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How about you? Can you introduce yourself?
Pretty good. Just decided to pull over on my way home from work here. Just giving a listen.
Nice. Would you mind introducing yourself real quick? Are you a current student, or are you looking into joining? And do you have a question for John?
Yeah, so actually, but my name is Michael. I currently work as a help desk technician, supporting a hospital here in Minnesota.
Great.
And I'm currently enrolled in the web development fundamentals class, but I'm in the complete software engineering path. So I'm enrolled in all 4 courses.
Yeah, that's right. So you're looking at a year's worth of learning in front of you.
Exactly. So I was obviously enrolled in college, but I wasn't getting what I wanted out of my classes.
All right. And so what question will you have for John?
Yeah. So for John, you mentioned previous experience at kind of the tech guy taking problems and things like that. So did any experience or trouble or knowledge or anything like that translate into the career you're in now?
I would say so. I worked a lot before with servers and Linux, and that's very useful in cloud because most of the systems that people run with up in the cloud are Linux servers. So being used to working with Linux, the command line, stuff like that, that's very helpful. I mean, or if you've been around forever and you're used to DOS and command line questions and file management. So that's very helpful if you're used to computers and fixing things like that. Also, if you're, I mean, the hospital might be very different. Because I was with a smaller company, some of the computers we had were Macs, some of them were Windows, some of them were Linux servers. And so being able to use all of them is very helpful as well, because you do have options of picking up an EC2 instance in the cloud that has any of those operating systems underlaying. So it's very helpful to have all of that information, as well as just getting sort of wrapping your mind around how everything works. Basic networking skills, IP addresses, things like that. All of that is going to be relevant in the cloud, because really the cloud is just a big network that's not in on premises. So having that background is very helpful, I would say.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
And then,
yeah.
Second question: with being enrolled in the full path, you kind of get and choose the order of the middle 2 classes. So with back end first, and then I know you guys just touched up and talked about that. What would be the preferred path, I guess? Because I know web development fundamentals at the end of it, you start touch JavaScript, and then with the full stack right into that JavaScript, whereas the back end is more SQL and Python.
Let me take that one, John, if you don't mind. Yeah, you're making a good point, Michael. So it all depends on how much knowledge you have about programming before joining. If you're comfortable with programming before joining the complete software engineering path, if you feel like you have a good handle on data structures and algorithms, the order should probably be web development fundamentals, then full stack, because to your point, you can continue on front end, you continue on JavaScript, and then you're touching on the back end with Node.js, and then you're continuing on the back end with Python and SQL and the cloud. But if you're not very familiar with programming, if you're not super confident in your knowledge of data structures and algorithms, the very first module, the one that you're in right now, is a great primer to get familiar with all of that, right? You learn programming a little bit using JavaScript. And then the first 5 weeks of Python is going to give you a really great foundation for programming. Because for 5 weeks, that's all what you're going to do. You're going to learn, programming concepts, functions, variables, loops, conditions. You're going to learn data structures. You're going to learn algorithms. And that's going to really help you understand everything else. And then you're going to go back to the front end and the full stack. And then your understanding of JavaScript, your understanding of all those concepts are going to be that much easier.
That makes sense.
All right. Hey, thank you for joining me, Michael. Have a good drive back home. And we'll
thank you. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
Sounds good.
There's a ton of questions. I love that. I want to bring you one more, John, from Taz here. And then I want to ask you about your job search, of course.
Sure.
Well, I'll let you read it. But so you graduated in December 2021. You got a job 3 months later.
Yep.
Well, we're getting into that job search period. So, like, typical questions: imposter syndrome. Did you have it? Like, did you feel like you knew enough? Did you feel like how many interviews did you do? Like, tell us all about that. And I think that's really the spirit
Sure.
of that question as
Well,
well.
I would say that I definitely had a good knowledge of Python. It helps if you are constantly bettering yourself. So I told people who asked me later in the Slack channel that if you are on Code Wars, if you are on Leak Code, if you are practicing with Python, you should be good. There are, of course, obscure areas that you could learn more, as with anything. I don't think any coder will tell you they know everything about any language at all. It's just like
If they were saying that, they would be lying.
Yes, and not only that, there's constant modules and updates, and there's new versions of the coding language that come up, and like
there's new languages every
thing,
month as well.
A couple of years ago, and it's like now everyone uses them. There's all kinds of things that are just going to come up in programming. You're never going to know everything, and you have to sort of be comfortable with that and say, hey, this is what I know. And if a project or an opportunity comes up that has something that you don't, then you just focus and learn and you figure it out. But as long as you know the basic fundamentals, you should be okay. Yeah. It's kind of like you might not know multiplication, but if you know addition, you know that you can extrapolate into multiplication. So it's the same kind of thing. Everything's built on what came before. And as long as you have a good knowledge of the underlying structures and systems, then you should be okay. And not only that, but the fact that you take a new camp course and you took the time to learn the language and gain the skills means that you're also probably willing to do that again for something new. So if something else comes up and you're like, man, I really want this job, but it has, all of these things that I haven't used very much, then you go take another course and learn and pick up the new skills and apply that to the new opportunity. So I think just you going through the course and learning and figuring something out is enough to let you know you can do it, you can figure things out, and that you can keep that in your back pocket as a skill or a tool that you can use going forward. So I would say it did help me immensely.
So tell us about your search. So you graduate in January, right? New Year resolution. You're going to get a job. You have a deadline. You know when your wife is due.
Yep.
You know you need a good job before that.
Yeah.
So what's your strategy? And actually, let's talk about now the fact that you have 2 LinkedIn profiles. I mean, why do you have 2 LinkedIn profiles? How did you come up with that approach?
So I was looking at I had graduated, right? And one of the things that you do right after you graduate is you take that post-graduation career search course, and it tells you a bunch of stuff. And I'm reading through this and they're telling you about your LinkedIn. And I'm like, but I have this huge LinkedIn profile and all of these connections, and they know me for one thing. And I said, is it worth pivoting and completely switching all of this stuff? Or should I just make a new one? It made more sense to me to make a new one from scratch. And so all of these people that I was going to connect with, they were going to be technology based. They weren't going to be about parties and events and asking me to, DJ Coachella or something like that. That's a totally different mindset in my mind. And so I didn't think they were really going to marry together. And I figured, let's just start a completely new one with these different skills. I don't want to have, event organization and then, Google Cloud certifications. Like it didn't make sense for me to have 2. And so I started a complete new one from scratch. I invited people who I knew that were in the technology sector. And then slowly but surely, I've been adding people that I think make most sense to network with regarding programming, technology, and all of that. So it's been a bit different, but that was just what made the most sense to me.
Because as you describe it, and I've never thought about, kind of recommending something like that. But as you describe it, it does make sense. And it's interesting because when I look at your 2 profiles, you have more connections now using your tech-oriented profile than you do on your previous profile. Yeah. And what I find is, I can see the wealth of experiences that you've had before joining the tech world. But you're right. If you had to actually place that into your new profile, people may wonder, okay, are you a DevOps engineer or are you a DJ?
Yeah, it would be so confusing. And so it didn't make much sense. So for my job search, I actually made up a plan. I watched a bunch of videos. I talked to a bunch of people who I knew who were already in tech. And I said, what makes the most sense? Like, how should I do this? How many people should I be applying to? How many companies? And so they said, you know what? in the beginning of any job, the hardest part is putting yourself out there. They said, apply for everything you see that sounds interesting, that you can genuinely see yourself being passionate about, because that passion and that interest is going to make people connect with you in the interviews.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I went on LinkedIn, I went on Indeed, and one other platform, Dice.
Okay.
And so I was just applying. Now, I probably did more than I should have. Actually, I definitely did more than I should have. I probably applied to about 40 to 50 jobs every day for about 2 weeks.
Every day? Wow.
Every day for 2 weeks. Now, I plan to do this for months.
Mm-hmm.
And I bit off way more than I can chew. If you've ever done a job interview for tech, you have probably found out that there's about 7 different pieces to each interview. Usually there's an initial interview, there's an assessment, there's often interviews with other people on the team. There's a whole lot of process that goes to it. And so I didn't think I was going to get that many bites. I had only done, this one thing. I didn't think it was going to work out too well for me. And I ended up getting about 20 companies who were interested. So 20 companies times 7 different interviews for each process. If I had another job, I would have been screwed. It was a full-time job just to do all of these interview processes. It was hard for me to keep track of what company this person was for. I ended up making this huge spreadsheet of every person. It was like every piece of that 7 parts of the puzzle were different people. And it was like, wait, what company are you with? Like, what is your, it was just so hard to keep track of all this stuff. And like I said, it was one of those things where DevOps cloud is one of those things that very few people have experience with. And so you're just really in demand for those skills. Not only that, but I was also taking job opportunities and offers from people who only wanted a Python programmer, only wanted somebody who did data visualization, because we touch on that, like I said, in the SQL course. And then I was also taking job applications for being a database manager, and again, cloud. But cloud was the ones that I actually had gone out and tried to get. But when you have a LinkedIn profile, you're going to get a bunch of people who start messaging you and saying, hey, would you be interested in something like this? And because I didn't have anything else, I said, sure, I'll take anything right now. I really want a job in tech. And I didn't think I was going to get the amount of people who were interested in me that were. And so I just ended up blowing up. And so it was crazy. Yeah.
So how much do you think having a very dedicated LinkedIn profile helped?
Immensely. The fact that that's all that was listed, that's everything that I was doing. And I think having a great resume and engaging with people in conversations meant the world. Wow. And the fact that it looked like that was all I did, that was everything to me, I think didn't distract from the fact that I had a life before and I had other skills. I can always bring that up in an interview and just sort of reference it. But to see that this is dedicated to my life in tech, I think that really helped.
Wow. Hey, I want to ask you to clarify one thing. There's a question people are actually asking, which bootcamp did you take? Which classes did you take? Did you take just the Python one, or did you take others? Can you clarify real quick?
Yeah, so you might have missed at the beginning of the episode, Ludo broke out what the backend class is. So the backend course is the only one I took. And the backend course is made up of 3 different modules. The first module is Python with data structures and algorithms. That's the first portion. The second module is SQL, data visualization, and you touch a little bit on containerization. And then the third part of the module is all cloud. So it's going to be AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. You're going to learn about Kubernetes. You're going to learn about all of that stuff. So it's all cloud. And so those 3 modules together make up that back-end course that I took.
That's right. Thank you. And then we have here someone from Azerbaijan. Hey, Sila, thanks for joining. I guess it's super late for you right now, so I really appreciate that you're taking the time. So can you tell us about, something that rarely happens is you had actually more that you could chew. Did you end up having multiple offers?
Yes.
Jesus. Wow. Congrats.
Thank you.
So how did you decide where to go?
I took the company that did the most interesting stuff, that I thought I would be most valued, and of course that paid me the most money. And it happened to be all 3 at the same company. So what I had talked to a friend of mine who worked at Google, and I talked to another friend of mine who works for Workforce.
Yeah,
And
Salesforce.
he mentioned Salesforce, and he mentioned that there are a lot of people in tech who are not very personable, and there are a lot of people who are personable who aren't very good with tech. He said finding someone who can do both is very rare, and so if you can do both, you'll be good. And I told him, I had been a DJ, and so I'm used to standing up in front of hundreds of people, being alone on a stage, having to be an MC, lead people through things, doing sales presentations, as I mentioned, being a liaison between companies, setting up things, going in not knowing what's going on, and just sort of being a fish in water. And so having that skill, as well as being able to code in the basement with no windows for hours, is just rare. And so
it is super rare. I was going to say it is very rare.
And he said, if you can play that up in your interviews and when you're talking to people, I think it's going to be something that people are really going to gravitate towards. And he ended up being right. And so I made sure I mentioned those things when I was talking to people in interviews. And so the company that I ended up working with is a consulting company. And so that means that you're going to go into a team and you're not going to know what's going on. And sometimes you're going to be just in the background consulting. Sometimes you're actually coding. Sometimes you're jumping into a scrum meeting. You never know what you're going to get. And you have to be able to be personable, but still know the technology and be able to, like I said, just with the whatever stack they have, because it's always different. It's going to change all the time. So you have to be quick on your toes.
No, and I can totally see that. Even as we talk, I can see how you're personable, how you're very well articulate. I want to ask you the question, fundamentally, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert?
So every time I take a test, I'm right in the middle. Usually it's smack dab right in the center. If you would ask me personally, I would say that I'm an introvert. Yeah. But if you ask people around me, they all think I'm an extrovert.
That's right.
So I don't know. It's hard to say. I personally find that I recharge my batteries when I'm by myself. And that's what they say.
That's the definition. Yeah.
But everyone around me says, no, you're an extrovert. You're the life of the party. You're talking to people. You just jump right in. It's no big deal. Like I said, most introverts you won't find, in front of 2,000 people performing. It's not something they would do. And I don't know. It's just that's
great. And you're right. Being able to bring those two together makes it very rare and very much in demand. So I'm not surprised that you had that many positive answers.
And like I said, the fact that I went specifically for cloud-based services, and there's just not enough people who know DevOps, DevSecOps, cloud architecting, solutions architecting, none of that.
And especially in consulting, consulting by definition, you need to be able to marry both. You need to be able to talk to the customer, and you need to be able to implement and do the work. So let's talk about your journey since then, because I wouldn't be surprised if you were becoming a team lead or something like that. So you joined that company back in March. Tell us, and there was a question around what is your day job? Tell us about since March. How was it? Like how has it been for you?
So let me also tell you another thing. So a lot of people have asked, and I put a post on the Slack channel when this first happened, but I actually joined immediately out of school as a senior architect. So I found a company that was willing to say, if you know the stuff, we'll bring you in wherever. I didn't go for any jobs that were junior. I was only looking at a regular engineer or a senior level, and I ended up getting a senior level. So that was one of the other things that really helped in my process. So I knew as long as you could find someone who appreciate that you know the stuff, they don't care how many years of experience or anything like that. They're just willing to take you. And so that was another reason why I picked the company that I went with, and how it sort of helped me find my feet and go right into where I want to be. So right now, my job is technically a couple of different names. So I was actually hired on to be a Azure solutions architect and senior software cloud architect is, I believe, what it says. So senior cloud architect, Azure solutions architect. But I've actually been completely working with AWS because that's just sort of how it goes. So like I said, when you're a consultant, you just have to be able to go wherever. And the fact, like I said, that I know GCP, I know Azure, and I know AWS, it means you can be the Swiss Army knife and work for whatever they need. And so my day job right now is I'm contracted out for a bank. And I work with a major bank, and I'm building sort of APIs, backend integrations, architecting their cloud, and I'm migrating some of their systems from one system to another, one major provider to another.
Wow, that's cool. That's pretty cool. Let's take one question here, and I think that's I was going to ask you about that. Did you go for a certification after the bootcamp?
Nope, none of them.
No need,
So,
right?
yeah, I know that they're valuable. And one of the reasons why I didn't is a lot of people don't know this, but when you join certain companies or you go into this field, people will pay for you to get them.
Yeah.
Because it makes you more marketable for them later. And so a lot of them actually don't even require that you stay with their company for a certain amount of years or anything like that. I know sometimes when you join a company and they pay for some of your schooling or for some of your certifications, they expect you to stay there. But I found that none of them have, like I said, in my hiring process. So I didn't get any certifications. I made sure that I just went in, I said, hey, I can take a test. I know this stuff. I'm happy to do it. And if you want me to get a certification, I'll do it. But if you don't care, then I don't care. And they said, come in as you are. If you want to get certificates later, we'll definitely pay for it. We'll make sure all of your certifications are taken care of. We pay for education here. We want you to be bettering yourself, but it's not necessary to get started.
That's awesome. There's more questions in that space. Alex is sharing that he did get certified, and right after that, actually, they were moving to Azure, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that worked out.
One question from Zuhair. Are there any classes after the front-end bootcamp that focuses on React and front-end languages? So I'm guessing you're talking about the Web Development Fundamentals Bootcamp, which is a 4 weeks one, and really talks about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Then if you join the actual front-end bootcamp, and it's labeled like that on our website, you're going to learn React and front-end languages. If you join the full stack bootcamp, that's going to be the same as well. You'll learn JavaScript, React, Bootstrap, and in full stack, you'll learn also about Node and NoSQL databases. And then we have a question from Kyle. Would you say there are better overall job opportunities for backend work? Yeah.
So, like I said, I found that there is for backend, but a lot of people who want you to work on a backend of a website or an application want you to have experience with front end because you're going to marry the two together. But if you are working in cloud, which, like I said, is covered in the backend course, that there's just like no people who specialize in that. It seems like even after now that I've had the job, I get probably 10 messages on LinkedIn a day with people asking if I'm willing to jump, if I'd be willing to talk to them, interview. Like I said, this is the only thing that I've ever done where people they come to you. I'm overloaded with people who want me to work for them.
Alex is saying learning a cloud service is going to be of great help in your marketability.
100%.
We have an announcement by the end of this month. It's going to be around this, and it's going to be huge. I can't tell what it is. Stay tuned. We're going to tease it. You're going to hear about it, but we're going to do something special in that space again. And I can't wait to say what it is. But yeah, we're going to have something in that space to share with everyone. We're about 2 minutes away from the end of this stream, John. What would you like to share with the audience regarding your journey? What do you think made you the most successful? What words of encouragement would you have for anyone trying right now to actually get in tech?
I would say trust the process. You guys have built something that will work. And knowing that I see all the time in the chat, in the Slack channel, that people are finding jobs. They're finding good jobs. They're getting hired on at Amazon, Google, like this is enough. And if you trust the process and you put in the work, you will get the result that you're hoping for. I also want to tell people not to sell themselves short. I've noticed a lot of people have said that they've gotten junior development jobs and they're accepting, $30,000, $40,000 a year. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. If you're not comfortable and you want more experience, of course, listen to yourself, trust yourself. But I think you'll find that you do have marketable skills that are worth a pretty penny. And I think that's really important for people to know because I don't want them to be pigeonholed or feel like they can't do it. Or like you said, a lot of people have imposter syndrome. And once you have these skills, if you talk to someone in tech or you just find people who know, hopefully you have some friends or people that you've met before who are in this sort of world, and they can tell you that's a very marketable skill. We're looking for people who have that. And this is what I've seen people who have that skill set make. And I want people to kind of understand that really all you're doing when you go to a company is that you are selling your hours of employment. And when you have certain skills, you can charge more for those hours.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, there's one last question from Taz. No, you don't need to wait. This is not a new bootcamp. It's something that's going to happen to an existing bootcamp, and it's going to be available, like always, it's going to be available to you. Actually, it's going to be available to you. So you don't have to wait. You'll get it when you get it. John, it was a real pleasure to have you here on the this new Campfire after the break. I was really truly impressed with your journey and how decisive you were in knowing exactly what you wanted to accomplish and how you were able to just do that. That's
I appreciate you guys, everything you guys did. Said you guys made it possible. I did not know any of the stuff that I use every day before coming to your course. So,
well, very much appreciate, and I wish you all the best with the kid. I know it's not easy. We talked about it. 6 months old, but yeah, thank you again for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you online in Slack. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Have a great Labor Day weekend as well, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you.